My name is Maya Konatzer, and I'm 28 years old. If you ask anyone who knows me, they'll probably describe me as steady. Not flashy, not wild, just reliable. I used to think that was a compliment. I've never been the kind of woman people post about online, no spontaneous road trips or rooftop parties. My days were simple. Wake up early, work long hours at my marketing job, cook dinner, save money, plan for a future that felt safe. Predictable, maybe, but it gave me peace. When I met Timothy Parker, everything changed. He was charming, magnetic, the kind of man who made even ordinary moments feel cinematic. He said I grounded him, that my calm steadiness balanced out his impulsive side. He once told me, "You're the only person who makes me want to slow down." Back then, I thought that meant forever. At first, we were perfect in our differences. I handled the bills, packed his lunch, when he forgot left notes in his jacket pocket. He made me laugh, dragged me into spontaneous weekend plans, taught me to try new things. I loved that about him, his energy, his confidence, his way of turning everything into a story. But somewhere along the way, his admiration turned into mockery. It started small. "You never want to do anything fun anymore," he'd tease, scrolling through Instagram. "All your friends are out living, and you're here, meal prepping." I'd laugh it off, pretending it didn't sting. "I just like things planned," I'd say. "Planned," he'd repeat, smirking. That's such a Maya word. He'd say things like that when his friends were around, light jabs that didn't sound cruel until you heard the laughter that followed. Once during a dinner with his coworkers, a woman joked about her crazy weekend in Bali. Timothy grinned and said, "Don't mind Maya, she's basically a 50-year-old trapped in a 28-year-old's body. Her idea of fun is reorganizing a spreadsheet." Everyone laughed. I did too. But inside I felt something break. That night, lying next to him, I stared at the ceiling. His breathing was calm, already asleep. I whispered softly, "Why is being dependable suddenly a flaw?" He didn't answer, and maybe that silence said everything. The tension grew invisible, but suffocating. Every time he compared me to someone else, someone more exciting, more passionate, I felt myself shrinking. Still, I convinced myself it was just a phase. We'd been together for 3 years. I'd seen him through failed startups, layoffs, and late-night breakdowns. Surely he wouldn't just turn cruel. Then came that night. It was past 9 p.m. I'd just finished an exhausting client call. When I opened the door, Timothy was sitting in the living room, a half-empty glass of whiskey in his hand. He didn't even look up. "You know what your problem is," he said, voice low but sharp. I set my bag down slowly. "What problem?" He laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You think being dependable makes you desirable. It doesn't. It makes you replaceable." I froze. "What are you talking about?" He swirled the ice in his glass. "You think saving money, following routines, being safe, that's what makes a man stay no Maya. That makes a man bored." His words hit me harder than I expected. I stood there too tired to fight, too stunned to cry. "I'm working for us," I whispered. "For our future." "Future," he scoffed. "You mean your dull little version of it. The one where we live on a budget and never go anywhere. God, you don't even know what living means." I could smell the alcohol on his breath, sharp and arrogant. "Timothy, stop," I said quietly. But he didn't. He leaned forward, eyes glinting. "You're the kind of woman men settle for when they're done having fun. The reliable backup plan. The one who's there when all the exciting ones leave." My throat tightened. "You don't mean that." He smiled, cold and deliberate. "Don't I?" The room went still. I could hear the hum of the fridge, the faint ticking of the clock. I wanted to scream, to throw his words back at him, to remind him of every time I stayed up helping him prep for a meeting, every time I paid rent, when his freelance checks were late, every time I believed in him more than he believed in himself. But I didn't say a word. I just stood there silent, breathing, burning. And that silence rattled him. He slammed his glass down. "Oh, don't act hurt. You know it's true. You cling to me because you're afraid you'll never do better." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "You think being kind is weakness, Timothy? One day you'll realize it isn't." He smirked. "Yeah, we'll see." I turned away, heart pounding. That night I slept in the guest room. He didn't check on me. He didn't apologize. He just let me drift away quietly like my absence meant nothing. The next morning, I half hoped he'd wake up sober, remorseful. But when I walked into the kitchen, he was laughing on his phone, reading a text. "Morning," I said carefully. He didn't look up. I set a mug in front of him. "Coffee?" He waved it away. "Nah, Chloe showed me this new place downtown. Once you've had real quality, you can't go back to cheap stuff." My chest tightened. "Chloe." He smirked. "A friend." But the way his lips curved told me otherwise. He stood, kissed my forehead like I was a stranger. "Don't wait up tonight," he said. "I might be late." And just like that, he walked out, leaving me in a kitchen that suddenly felt foreign. I sat there staring at the untouched mug of coffee steam, fading into cold air. For the first time in years, I realized something terrifying. The man I loved wasn't just pulling away, he was pushing me down. And maybe he always had been. The next few days felt like walking through fog, thick, heavy, and disorienting. Timothy barely spoke to me, except for small cutting remarks disguised as indifference. He came home later, smelled like perfume that wasn't mine, and carried a confidence that didn't belong to guilt. I tried to convince myself he was just going through a rough patch. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe he'd come back down once the excitement wore off. But deep down, I knew better. It was a Thursday night when the truth finally broke the surface. He stumbled. In late hair, messy shirt, half untucked. Phone glowing in his hand. I was sitting on the couch with a book I hadn't turned a page of in 20 minutes. "Hey," I said softly. "Hey," he replied without looking up. He dropped his keys, poured himself a glass of whiskey, and sat down across from me. Silence, just the clink of ice and the hum of the fridge. "Rough day?" I asked. He laughed, not bitter this time, but cruel. "You could say that." He leaned back, eyes scanning me like I was a spreadsheet he'd already finished reading. Then he said it the words that would change everything. "You know, men like me need passionate women, Maya, not safe ones." I blinked. Passionate. He nodded, grinning like it was a joke. Women who live, who take risks, who don't spend every weekend checking price tags and making lists. I felt my throat tighten. "So what, I'm boring now?" He shrugged, pretending to think. "Not boring, just predictable. You're like comfort food. Reliable, familiar, but after a while you crave spice." "Spice," I repeated quietly. "You mean Chloe?" His grin didn't falter. "At least she knows how to live." The words landed like shards of glass. Sharp, precise, deliberate. I stood, heart pounding in my ears. So this is what it's about. Her. He chuckled, sipping his drink. "Oh, come on. Don't be dramatic. You knew this was coming. We're just different people." "No," I said. "We're the same people we've always been. You're just bored." He waved his hand lazily. "You think I want to spend my life counting coupons and watching reruns. I want excitement, Maya. Adventure. You've built a cage and called it security." I stared at him, at the man I once believed was my partner, and saw nothing but a stranger. "You're confusing chaos with freedom," I said quietly. He smirked. "You're confusing fear with loyalty." That was it, the final crack. I turned away, tears stinging but unfallen. My voice was calm when I asked, "So what are you saying, Timothy?" He finished his drink, set the glass down with a click, and said it with chilling ease. "I'm saying you'll survive without me, and I'll be better off finding someone who's actually on my level." The silence after that was deafening. I watched him lean back confident, certain he'd broken me. Instead, I walked past him straight into the bedroom. He followed his tone, suddenly annoyed. "Oh, come on, don't sulk. You knew this wasn't working." I pulled out a suitcase. The sound of the zipper sliced through the air. "What are you doing?" he demanded. I didn't look up. "Exactly what you told me to, surviving without you." He scoffed, crossing his arms. "You're not serious. You don't even have the guts." I folded my clothes neatly, deliberately. "You've mistaken quiet for weakness." "Maya," he said sharply, voice rising, "stop being dramatic." I paused, turned to him, and met his gaze, calm, steady, unflinching. "You call me safe, predictable, replaceable," I said. "But you're the one who's afraid. Afraid of stillness. Of someone who sees through your noise." He blinked, his smirk faltering for the first time. "You told me men like you need passionate women," I continued softly. "Then go find one. Just remember, passion burns fast. Stability lasts." He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I zipped the suitcase, closed it, and walked toward the door. "Maya, wait," he said. His voice half angry, half nervous. "You're not actually leaving." I turned one's hand on the doorknob. "Watch me." For the first time, he looked uncertain, like he hadn't expected the fire behind the quiet woman he'd taken for granted. I stepped into the hallway. The air felt cold, heavy, real. He called after me. "You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back. Women like you always do." I didn't even turn around. My suitcase wheels clicked against the tiles, echoing down the hall. Each sound was a heartbeat, a goodbye, a declaration. Inside me, something shifted, not brokenness, but release. That night, for the first time in years, I slept soundly. Not because I stopped loving him, but because I finally started loving myself. When I first left Timothy, the silence was suffocating. No arguments, no laughter, no noise at all, just the hum of my old refrigerator and the creak of the floorboards beneath my feet. For years, my life had revolved around us. My schedule, my meals, even my weekends had been shaped by him, what he wanted to eat, where he wanted to go, how he wanted to feel. Now it was just me. The first week, I couldn't even sleep in my own bed. Every shadow felt like a memory. Every quiet second reminded me of the sound of his voice saying, "You're not enough." I kept expecting a text, an apology, something. But nothing came. So I filled the silence myself. I woke up early even when I didn't need to. I made coffee and actually drank it slowly without rushing to pack lunches or check his messages. I went for walks around the neighborhood, bought groceries for one, started journaling again. It was awkward at first, like learning to breathe through new lungs. Then one morning I saw my reflection while brushing my teeth, and I realized I looked different, not broken, just empty, like a photo that had lost its color. That was the moment I decided to rebuild. I joined a gym, something I used to tease Timothy for doing. The first day was brutal. I couldn't lift much, couldn't run far. My legs ached for days. But every drop of sweat felt like I was rinsing him off my skin. After a few weeks, I started noticing changes. I stood taller, my breathing slowed. My body felt like mine again. At work, my focus sharpened. My boss started trusting me with bigger projects. One evening, after a long presentation, she smiled and said, "You've got this calm confidence I've never noticed before." I smiled back. She had no idea what it had cost to earn that calm. Meanwhile, the world around me kept turning, including Timothy's. I didn't ask about him, but I didn't have to. People talk. Mutual friends mentioned he was seeing Chloe, now the passionate woman he'd compared me to. She was everything I wasn't: loud, impulsive, flirtatious, constantly chasing something new. They posted pictures online, expensive dinners, weekend trips, champagne bottles with captions like, "Find someone who matches your energy." I didn't look for the posts, but they found me anyway. It's strange how the internet delivers heartbreak long after the person's gone. At first, I felt that familiar ache, jealousy wrapped in humiliation. But over time, that ache dulled. Their photos looked staged, their smiles too bright, and I couldn't help noticing how desperate it all seemed. I didn't react. I didn't comment. I didn't even block him. My silence became my weapon, and in that stillness, I started to grow again. Months passed. I learned to cook dishes I'd never tried before. I started photography again. Something Timothy once told me was a cute hobby that wouldn't pay the bills. I took my camera out at sunrise, capturing quiet streets before the world woke up, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible behind the lens. Sometimes late at night, I'd think about the things he'd said: replaceable, boring, safe. I used to hate those words. Now, they didn't sting anymore. Safe means I can trust myself. Predictable means I keep my promises. And replaceable, no. There's only one me. A few months later, my phone buzzed during lunch at work. A friend had sent me a screenshot. Chloe had posted something. "Never mistake chaos for passion. Some people will drain you dry and call it love." The comments were filled with sympathy. Timothy wasn't in her photos anymore. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. But I won't lie, I felt something inside me settle, like the universe had just whispered, "See." It wasn't joy, it wasn't revenge, it was confirmation that silence, dignity, and distance can destroy what shouting never could. One evening, as I watered my plants, my phone lit up. No number. "Hey stranger, just checking in." I stared at the message. No name, no apology, just that same smug tone disguised as charm. I locked the screen and placed the phone face down. The next morning, there was another text. "I drove by your old place today. Made me think of you. Hope you're doing okay." I exhaled slowly. For a second, I almost laughed. Because that was the thing about people like Timothy, they always came back. Not because they missed you, but because they missed what you did for them. And this time, I wasn't going to give him a single word. I poured myself coffee, sat by the window, and watched the sunlight spill across my apartment. It looked the same as the morning he told me I was replaceable. Except now I knew the truth. I wasn't the woman who needed him. I was the woman who'd learned how powerful silence can be. Time is funny. It doesn't heal everything, but it does expose what's real. By the time summer rolled around, I hadn't thought about Timothy in weeks. My life had settled into a rhythm that felt peaceful. Mornings with coffee and music instead of arguments. Evenings spent reading or editing photos, not waiting for texts that never came. But the world has a strange way of delivering closure when you least expect it. I ran into Tara, a mutual friend, at a coffee shop one Friday. She hesitated before speaking like someone holding a secret too juicy to keep. "You've heard about Timothy, right?" she asked, lowering her voice. I sipped my latte calm. No, and I'd prefer to keep it that way. She smiled, unable to help herself. Well, let's just say Karma showed up wearing high heels. I raised an eyebrow, meaning she leaned in. Chloe cleaned him out. Literally. Maxed his credit cards, borrowed money in his name, and disappeared. He's been calling everyone for help. For a moment, I said nothing, just stared at the foam swirling in my cup. Not because I was shocked, but because I wasn't. Tara continued. He told people she was his soulmate. Now he's saying she ruined his life. I bit back a smile. Sounds like he finally met his match. After that, little updates trickled in. I never asked for them, but they found me anyway. Timothy had lost his job. His landlord evicted him after missed payments. The car he used to brag about the one Chloe loved to pose beside got repossessed. And Chloe she'd moved on within weeks, with a new guy who looked like Timothy's richer twin. The irony was poetic. Meanwhile, my life had blossomed quietly. The promotion I'd been working toward finally came through. My manager called it well-deserved consistency. Those two words, the same ones Timothy once mocked, now felt like a crown. I moved into a brighter apartment downtown, bought a new camera lens, adopted a cat named Juniper who filled my evenings with soft purrs instead of insults. My reflection changed too, not just the outside, but the energy. My posture straighter, my voice calmer, my smile real. It wasn't revenge that made me feel powerful, it was peace. A few weeks later it happened, a message from Timothy. Timothy, hey, just checking in. You look amazing, by the way. I stared at the screen for a moment, then locked it. But curiosity, or maybe old habit, got the better of me. I checked his profile. He looked different. Thinner. Paler. The confident grin replaced by something brittle. His photos were quiet now. No flashy dinners, no Chloe. Just grainy selfies captioned with new beginnings and learning to focus on myself. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But pity wasn't love. It was closure in disguise. 2 nights later, my phone rang. His name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. Maya, he said too quickly. Wow, I wasn't sure you'd pick up. I kept my voice steady. You got 2 minutes. He laughed awkwardly. Fair. Look, I know I messed things up. But you were always different. You cared. You made me better. I closed my eyes, listening to the irony. He didn't sound sincere. He sounded lonely. I'm not calling to rehash old things I said. If you need closure, you already have it. I walked away. He sighed. You don't even want to hear me out. I don't need to. You made your choice, Timothy, and I made mine. There was silence. Then his voice cracked just a little. Chloe. She wasn't what I thought she was. I cut him off. Stop. Don't use me to clean up your regrets. Maya, please, Click. I hung up. The sound was final clean, like a door locking from the inside. For the first time in years, I didn't cry after hearing his voice. I didn't even shake. I just sat there watching the city lights outside my window, realizing how far I'd come. He used to tell me I was too cautious, too careful, too safe. But maybe that's exactly why I survived him. A week later, Tara sent me another message. Guess who showed up at the gym today looking for you? I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because I already knew. When karma finally wears expensive perfume, it doesn't come to gloat. It just passes by softly reminding you you don't need revenge when you already have peace. That night, I journaled for the first time in months. Sometimes losing someone isn't punishment. It's preparation for the woman you're meant to become. I closed the book and smiled. For the first time in a long time, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. It happened on a Tuesday evening. Ordinary, unremarkable, the kind of night you almost forget the moment it ends. I'd just finished a long day at work, stopped by a bookstore, and was halfway through a cup of tea when my phone started buzzing. Timothy. For a moment, I just stared at his name glowing on the screen. It had been nearly 8 months since I walked out of that apartment. 8 months since I decided silence was louder than pleading. I shouldn't have answered, but curiosity is a stubborn ghost. Hello, I said, my tone neutral. There was a pause, then his voice soft, too careful. Maya. Wow. You picked up. 2 minutes, I reminded him. That's all you get. He gave a small laugh, the kind that once melted me. But now it sounded rehearsed. Still direct, I see. Still busy, I replied. He exhaled loudly like he'd been holding his breath for months. Look, I know I don't deserve to call. I know I screwed up, but I needed to talk to you. I said nothing. Let the silence press against him. He continued, his voice cracking just enough to sound human again. Chloe, she wasn't what I thought. She drained me, lied, used me. I lost everything. My job, my savings. I even had to move back with my brother for a while. I didn't flinch. He was waiting for pity, but all I felt was distance, the kind that no apology can close. He went on. I keep thinking about how good things were with you. You were steady, kind, patient. You always had my back. I didn't see it then, but you were the one thing that actually worked in my life. Worked, I repeated. That's an interesting word to use for love. He hesitated. I mean, you know what I mean. You were good for me. You kept me grounded. I miss that. I miss you. I took a breath, steady and slow. You don't miss me, Timothy. You miss control. You miss stability, the kind you didn't have to earn. He went quiet, then softer. You sound different. I am different, I said. I finally stopped apologizing for being the woman you couldn't handle. He sighed, almost in disbelief. So that's it. You're just done. Timothy, I said, my voice calm but final. I was done the night you told me men like you needed passionate women. I realized then that you didn't want love. You wanted an audience. He tried again, desperate this time. Can't we at least talk? Maybe dinner. One chance to... No. The silence that followed was long and sharp. I could almost hear him blinking in shock. Maya, he said finally. Don't you even care that I've been struggling? I let out a quiet laugh, not cruel, just tired. Care. You didn't care when I begged for your respect. Why should I care now? He muttered something under his breath. You've changed. I had to. Then I hung up. For days after I felt nothing, no guilt, no sadness, no triumph, just stillness, like closing a door on a room I'd already cleaned. But the world, as always, has its sense of timing. 2 weeks later, I saw him again. It was at my gym of all places. I'd just finished my workout wiping sweat from my neck when I spotted him near the entrance. He looked smaller somehow, his shoulders slumped, his confidence deflated. Maya, he said softly, almost like he was afraid I'd vanish. I froze, not because I still felt anything, but because I realized in that moment I truly didn't. He walked closer, forcing a smile. You look... Wow, you've changed. I told you I did. His eyes flickered over me, the athletic frame, the quiet poise, the peace he could never give me. You look amazing, he said. Healthier, happier. I am, he swallowed. Listen, I know I said horrible things. I was arrogant. I thought I wanted excitement, but Chloe, she was a nightmare. You were everything I didn't appreciate. Can't we just start over? I met his gaze steady and unflinching. No, Timothy, we can't. He blinked like he hadn't expected the answer to come so quickly. Why not, he asked. Because the woman you hurt doesn't exist anymore. He looked confused. What does that mean? It means the version of me who waited up for you, who made excuses for your cruelty, who believed your words over her own instincts, she's gone. You killed her the night you called her replaceable. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I picked up my gym bag and stepped closer, lowering my voice. You told me men like you needed passionate women. You were right. You just didn't realize passion isn't chaos. It's strength. And I've found mine. Then I walked past him. No glance back. No hesitation. Behind me, I heard him whisper, "You'll regret this." But his voice trembled, and for the first time, I knew he didn't believe it either. That night, I sat on my balcony with Juniper curled up beside me, the city lights stretching far and endless. I thought about how many times I'd waited for this, an apology, a reckoning, a moment of regret, and now that it had come, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like peace. Because real revenge isn't making someone miss you. It's becoming someone they'll never deserve again. 6 months passed. Long enough for old wounds to turn into faint scars. By then, Timothy had become a name I barely thought about, not because I'd forgiven him, but because he no longer mattered. My world had color again. The morning smelled of freshly brewed coffee and wet soil from the balcony plants. My photography business, something he once called a silly dream, had started picking up clients. Weekends were no longer about keeping someone else happy. They were mine. Then came the wedding invitation. A mutual friend, Olivia, was getting engaged, and she insisted I come. I hesitated at first. Olivia was close to both of us back then. If Timothy showed up, the air would shift. But after everything, I wasn't the one who needed to hide. So I went. The evening was soft and golden, the kind of light that flatters even broken hearts. I wore a simple navy dress, hair pinned loosely, no statement jewelry. I didn't need decoration to feel strong. The moment I stepped into the hall, I felt eyes turn. Familiar faces, half-remembered smiles, whispers like ripples. And then, him. Timothy. He was standing near the bar nursing a drink, laughing too loudly at a joke that wasn't funny. He looked older, not in years, but in weight. The kind of heaviness that comes from running too long in the wrong direction. When he saw me, the laughter caught in his throat. His eyes widened, and for a second I saw the flash of something like regret or disbelief. He walked over, trying to compose himself. Maya. Timothy. You look... He stopped searching for a word that didn't sound pathetic. Incredible. Thank you, I said, tone polite but distant. He hesitated. Can we talk? I almost said no, but then I realized I didn't owe him fear anymore. Sure, I said. 5 minutes. We stepped out onto the terrace where the air was cooler, the city stretching out below us like a quiet witness. He shoved his hands in his pockets. You really changed. I told you I would. He nodded slowly. I see that. You seem stronger, happier. I am both. He stared down at his shoes, then back at me. Is there someone new? There it was, the question he'd really come for. I smiled. There is. His jaw tightened, eyes flickering with jealousy. Who is he? I met his gaze calm and steady. Me. He blinked, not understanding. I fell in love again. I continued softly, but this time with the one person you made me forget about myself. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The silence between us was thick, final. I stepped closer, just enough for my voice to carry. You told me once that men like you needed passionate women. You made me believe I wasn't enough. But you were wrong, Timothy. I wasn't too little, I was too much for your limits. His lips parted a faint whisper of Maya, but I stopped him. No, I said gently. You don't get to say my name like that anymore. You had the best version of me and mistook her patience for weakness. You called me replaceable, but the truth is, you'll spend the rest of your life trying to find another me, and you never will. The wind picked up, brushing a loose strand of hair across my cheek. I tucked it behind my ear, smiled, not with bitterness, but freedom. I hope you find peace someday, I said quietly, but it won't be with me. Then I turned and walked away. As I re-entered the hall, Olivia caught my hand. Are you okay? I nodded, smiling genuinely. I'm perfect. And I was. Because strength isn't in the confrontation. It's in the calm that follows it. Later that night, as I left the party, I glanced over my shoulder, once not to look for him, but to remind myself that I no longer needed to. The woman who once begged for his love was gone. The woman walking out into the night was untouchable. He once told me I wasn't woman enough for his needs. Turns out I was more woman than he could ever handle. Some people are meant to break you, not to destroy you, but to rebuild you into something stronger. I don't hate him anymore. I just thank him for showing me exactly who I'll never be again. The camera pans upward, the city lights glowing like small stars against the dark. Maya walks away, her heels clicking against